The history of the economic crisis in Germany before the Second War began signing the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. The World War I winners deprived Germany of a part of its territories, which 3/4 of iron ore reserves. Germany was also supposed to pay $33 billion of reparations. This caused Germany to plunge into chaos of inflation during the Great Depression in 1929. The economic setback in the United States deprived Germany of the source of finance. People became depressed and were looking for anything to help them. During this time of great chaos, it is when Adolf Hitler urged the nation to switch to dictatorship to rescue the nation's economy.
The Nazi Party came to power in Germany through the economic distress the country went into after the Treaty of Versailles, which left the country in despair, leading to a need for a dominant power like the Nazis.
In the following photo of Hitler, this X-rayed portrait with a verbal column of gold coins in the insignia of the Nazi Party, a swastika placed over his heart. This image was used as a metaphor to expose Hitler's hidden interest in financial power. The German Communist Party tried to reveal the Nazis' party's true interest in capitalist financial power, to the exclusion of the interests of the working class.
Chris Truman wrote, "Many young men were taken off the unemployment figure when conscription was brought in the 1935, and men had to do their time in the Army. By 1939, the Army was 1.4 million strong. To equip these men with weapons, factories were built, and this took even more off the unemployment figure. However, there is no doubt that work was created. The Nazis introduced public work schemes for men who worked in the National Labor Service, or the RAD. Their work would have included digging ditches on farms to assist irrigation, building new autobahns, or planting new forests. The economy was crashing, where people were out of jobs. They were looking for someone to come up with a solution. When the Nazi Party came in, they started making promises to these people, and they decided to follow them because they had nothing to lose."
On our guided tour, the tour guide told our group that Jews lost their citizenship in 1935 and that they were sent to concentration camps and were forced to do work there and were paid with little to basically no food. By taking away the Jews' citizenship, it removes them from the population count and also the unemployment rate. By not having the Jewish population included in the unemployment rates, the unemployment kept going lower and lower. By sending the Jews to the horrible concentration camps, they were forced to do work, and little pay they got was in food. But it was never enough to support a human. This meant that the German government was getting work done without having to pay someone to do it. For its secondary source, we asked my uncle who lives in Germany. Our first question for him was, why were the Jewish people blamed for the economic problems in Germany? That is a very interesting question, he said. During this period, the German people were facing some very large economic problems and some very high rates of unemployment, especially my father. He unfortunately did not have a job for several months, and that was very hard for him to find a job. Many Germans were on edge because they still had to pay enormous amounts of money for World War I and had an all-time high percentage of unemployment. Many Jewish people had jobs at the time, so when Hitler came to power, he eliminated many rights of Jewish people around us. A few months later, after Hitler came to power, my father found a job in a factory. He thought it was weird how all of a sudden he found a job, but he began to realize that Jewish people were losing rights and disappearing from their normal jobs around the city. Many little Jewish shops around the town began to close. My father couldn't do anything about it because he needed a job to support my growing family. This is when the Nazis released the anti-Jewish decrees. Many of the people around our town did not believe in humiliating the Jewish people, but really had no option. Too many of the families were unemployed and becoming desperate. If you have learned this in school, my father called it scapegoat. So the blame wasn't put on the German people, but the Nazis put it on the Jewish people. After Nazis came to power, the unemployment started to go down dramatically. Our second question for him was, why did the German people buy into the theory that Jews were at fault? I guess German people bought into the Nazis' theory that Jews were at fault because Hitler used the idea of scapegoat. He didn't want to admit that it was the Germans' fault for unemployment, inflation, and debt from World War I. No one wanted to admit that it was their fault and being in the pit of debt. It would just be easier to blame someone else, the Jewish people. How did the Nazi party finally convince the rest of Germans to join them? I believe that most Germans were convinced to join the Nazi party through Hitler's speeches. My father would say how moving and thought-provoking they were. He would offer an opportunity to everyone. He offered jobs to the unemployed, rising profits to business and factories. Many people only thought of the pros for these ideas. They never thought what would have to be sacrificed for these wonderful ideas. I hope my answers are okay, and this is what I learned through my years of school and how they educated us on the topic. No one in my country thinks of the Nazis as a separate party. We take blame for how we handled Hitler and coming to this dictatorship.
At the end of the day, what did all of this do for Germany? What all of this did for the Nazis was that it's helped them sneak into power through promises of better economy. The economy, on paper at least, improved. Jobs were created for more people, public services were done, and the economy was much better than before. But still, Jews and women had no benefits in the new economy.